Welcome to Dark Conduit, where shadows whisper and the unseen is brought into the eerie light of your screen. Here, we delve into the depths of horror and suspense, narrating tales that will chill your spine and haunt your dreams. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. Welcome to the nightmare.
We're thrilled to have you.
Don't take the back roads. I've lived most of my life way out in the valley countryside of Ontario. Given, that's not a whole lot for an 18-year-old, but for me, it's the only place I can call home. And I like to think that I know the entire area, as far and sprawling as it is, like the back of my hand. Adventures across the long, cross-crossing roads, pastures, and woods that made up the skeleton of my village were a common venture in my childhood. As a young kid, I had a habit of biking extremely far out in hopes of finding new places, and sometimes my dad or one of my friends' parents would toss out bikes in their pickup and take us way out onto a back road and let us explore for a few hours. This was how a lot of us first found that on one of these crappy gravel roads surrounded by thin woods was a worn-down old shack sitting just about 20 meters off of the path. Honestly, I never thought anything of it, except for the fact that it was creepy. It had no windows to see inside, and I never went anywhere near it, but one of my friends at the time said that her older sister had tried to go in it and that the door was always locked. We all had better things to be curious about at the time than that anyway, so I quickly moved on, and it became nothing more than a mundane landmark of that area. Honestly, I had completely forgotten about it for a few years now. Except last Tuesday, I was coming home from one of my very late classes at my university, and I usually take the back roads I perused many years ago, as they're more straightforward and scarcely ever have any sort of traffic. As I drove down the gravel path that would wind along the side of the country and eventually take me to the next street I needed to turn onto, I noticed a faint glinting coming from within the trees up ahead, maybe about 100 meters from my car. A flashlight? I thought, but as my car came closer, I realized what I was really seeing. The light inside of the shack was on. I should mention now that in all of the nearly 13 years I've spent living in my area, I have never seen the door open, and I've never seen a light on inside of that shack, ever. Not even once. I must have driven past that shack probably almost 100 times in my life, but this was the first time I'd ever seen any sign of a person's presence having been anywhere near that thing. That, coupled with the fact that it was 10 o'clock at night and pitch black outside, aside from my own headlights, and the faint incandescent glow lighting up the door frame up ahead, immediately filled me with what I can only describe as a weird sense of dread. It would be hard for most people not to be immediately unsettled by something like that, and I am someone who's easily spooked. Fortunately, while my car approached the light, I was curious enough that despite the feeling in my stomach, I slowed down as I was about to pass, hoping that I could see what was going on inside. And this is probably the only reason I managed to spot the dark shape that burst out of the foliage on the side of the road, directly into my path. I wasn't going very fast at that point, but I still pounded the brakes rather hard in alarm, so my car came to a crunching stop on the gravel. For a moment, I was just really confused and freaked out. What was that? Had I almost hit a deer or something? This far out in the country, a deer would have been the most likely and most reasonable assumption. But in the beams of my car, I could see what had stopped me. A very tall, very lanky old man with scraggly and balding gray hair. Right away, I got the impression that this man was very poor. He looked dirty and unkempt, and his clothes hung off of him. However, I'm generally used to seeing people who aren't that well off in my town, and I don't like to judge people right away based off of that sort of thing, so I was mostly just extremely unsettled over what the hell this guy was doing way out here, and why he had walked out in front of my car. As I sat there confused, the old man came around to my window and knocked on the glass. Feeling my memories of stranger danger conversations with my parents kicking in, as old as those conversations were, I rolled down the window just a crack, only enough for someone to be able to hear me and for me to hear them. I was already creeped out enough as it was. Immediately, I had to say what I was thinking. What are you doing out here? I asked. In my peripheral vision, I could still see the light from the shack, but in my mind's eye, I wasn't really registering it anymore. Stupid, I know. I should have made the connection immediately, but I was still kind of shaken by the fact that I could have run this guy over if I hadn't been able to stop in time, and being a new driver and all the thought of that was terrifying. After a small pause, the man started talking to me. He had a thick, croaky sort of voice, and he spoke very slowly. "My truck. It's broken," he explained. Okay. I was also getting the feeling that he wasn't really all there, mentally. I didn't have to look around to notice there wasn't any truck on the side of the road, but I did anyway, turning my head around to confirm what I already knew. There was definitely no truck. Had he somehow driven it into the trees or something? As far as I could remember and see, there wasn't enough space anywhere in them for a truck to fit through. What was the man talking about? While I was looking, it was honestly as through, I could feel that he was watching me, and when I turned back, he was still leaning down to peer inside of my window at me. "Where?" "I don't see it," I blurted. I was definitely distrustful of this guy already. At first he didn't respond, and my nerves were only getting worse the longer we were alone out here. Then he replied, "It's just up the road," he said, turning just to point with his finger in that general direction. The lights on my car aren't exactly the greatest, but I could still see far enough that I really couldn't imagine where on earth this truck was supposed to be. I couldn't spot the faintest sight of it. While I squinted up ahead, he continued, "I'll show you where if you come." At this point, I really had no idea what this old man was thinking I could do to help. I'm 18 years old, female, and very petite. I don't exactly look like the type of person who knows a lot about cars or how to fix them. And for the record, I'm really not. But I was tired from a long day at school, so I absolutely was not at my brightest. And for some reason, a part of me felt guilty about leaving him out here alone if his truck really was broken. "Okay," I said, and I reached to my gear shift to start driving slowly up the road. But as soon as he saw my hand, he shook his head. "Just walk, it's not too far." "What?" "Excuse me, but no thanks." How the hell was I going to see anything in the dark if I got out of my car and followed him? Anyway, there was no harm in driving wherever he was trying to lead me. The more I talked to the guy, the more unnerved I was getting, and the more red flags were starting to pop up in my mind. I couldn't see a car anywhere, and this total stranger wanted me to get out of mine and follow him into the dark on this creepy road in the middle of nowhere. I will admit I am a bit of a naive person, but I'm definitely not that stupidly so. No, I'd rather drive to it," I responded. This situation really wasn't making any sense to me. I could see his brow furrow, and he looked kind of agitated. He insisted, "Your car won't fit in the trees anyway." So, did his truck crash, then? Why the trees, if we were going up the road? I remembered what I'd just been thinking a minute earlier about there not being enough space, and I asked him, "Then how did yours get in the trees?" The only logical explanation would have been that his truck had swerved off the road. But even if that were the case, there was seriously nothing at all that I could have done to help him fix his car or get it back out again. It genuinely made no sense at all to be asking me to come with him and help, and the entire situation was beginning to make me very scared. There was a lengthy enough pause between my question and him speaking up that I was beginning to think he didn't hear me or something, so I asked again. Still no immediate answer. When he finally did reply, he was staring at me directly in the eyes. I think I'm going to have nightmares about it for a long time. It was so sudden, and the way he said it was just so unbelievably creepy. "You don't look old enough to drive." I hear comments like this a lot, since I do look very young because of my size. Normally somebody would say this with a smile or something to signify that this in fact meant to be taken as a joke, but the guy's face didn't change even slightly. He just kept staring at me with a completely cold expression. The sheer inappropriateness of such a remark in that kind of situation immediately had my heart racing, and all I could think was, holy fucking shit. What did this guy want with me? What I wanted to say next was, "Who the fuck are you?" But instead, I anxiously fumbled for my phone in my pocket, babbling in a way that probably made it really obvious I was completely freaked out of my mind. Um, okay, I can just call someone to come help you out. There's not really anything I can do. As I said that, it occurred to me to wonder, did this old guy not have a cell phone of his own? I know not every older person has one, even if they're becoming much more common, but seriously. And then I also remembered, with a sudden streak of massive fear, the shack with the light on. I could still see the light coming from it just up ahead in the trees, and my dumb brain finally put two and two together. The old man hadn't even mentioned it at all. It was like it wasn't even there to him, and there was definitely no one out there that could have turned the light on, but the guy who was standing outside my car right now. What was he doing out here in that shack then, which had been locked for all these years by someone I never knew? There was definitely no truck around here. He wanted me out of my car for another reason. I think maybe the old man must have seen on my face that I was scared out of my wits and about to book it out of there. Instead of any words, without warning, his face contorted with rage, and he swung his fist, pounding it against my window with enough strength to make it shudder. His eyes were wide, and he looked furious and completely fucking insane. Even though I was panicking more than I ever had in my life, and I was sure he was about to smash the window in if he tried again, I screamed, threw my phone onto the floor, switched gears, and slammed my foot down on the gas pedal. I hurtled down the road, and when I glanced into my rearview mirror, I saw his dark shape turn from standing in the road. And I watched as he turned, and he walked off the road, directly back towards the light of the shack. I didn't slow down at all until I was nearly home, and absolutely sure that there was no way that he could have followed me. When I got home that night, I spent a long time crying about what had happened with my mom. And though I don't think she believed all of what I told her, we don't have the greatest relationship. She called up everyone she knew to ask if anyone knew the old man, or if they knew who owned that shack. In a town like ours, just about everyone knows each other, but no one had any clue who he was. One of our family friends even swore that he was sure it's been abandoned for at least 4 years now. And since most people don't usually take that road, no one said that they've ever seen a light on or the door open but me. I've been taking a different route home from school since, and I really don't think I ever want to head back down that road. Creepy guy in the shack, please, let's not meet again. Terrorized for 2 hours. This happened when I was in college. I lived in Isla Vista, the student community at UCSB, notorious for being a party school. It fully lived up to its reputation. I liked to party, but holy shit, these people were off the wall. As such, there were a lot of people who put themselves in dangerous situations, drinking to excess, not being careful, not locking doors, etc. It had a very isolated and insular vibe, and anyone who was hanging around who wasn't college-aged immediately looked out of place and strange. One night after having a few drinks, I came home to my small house where I lived with 2 other girls, probably around 2:30 a.m. We were all serious students. I was probably the least serious, actually. And when we partied, it was not your typical UCSB mega rager, more like a small get-together with friends. We would often have a few people spend the night, sleep on our furniture, or in our beds as the case may be. That night, my roommates had had a few people over who I didn't know, and I saw when I returned home that one of them had opted to sleep on the couch from the shadow that I saw there. I didn't turn the light so I wouldn't wake anyone up. But as I was passing the couch to enter my bedroom, I noticed that the figure was lying very stiff. He just had this weird energy to him. He was lying down, but it was like he was putting all of his energy into lying as still and rigid as possible. I paused, and the guy quickly jerked his head to face me, without moving his limbs, so quickly that it startled me. I could see his wide-open eyes glinting in the dark. Figuring that I'd startled him, or that he was drunk, or maybe on some kind of stimulant and unable to sleep, I just hurried past into my bedroom and locked the door. The dude made me nervous, and I wasn't taking any chances. I fell asleep. At 4:30 a.m., I woke up. There was a strange sound at the door, almost like somebody was drumming their fingers against the wood very quietly. I lay still and listened. There were more quiet sounds like someone scratching the door with their fingers, which got louder and louder until it was clear that he was using both hands and scratching as fast and as hard as possible. It created an extremely loud and intimidating sound that filled me with fear. I got my cell phone and texted my roommate because I was afraid to make a sound. "Your friend is freaking me out. Is he coked out? Can you talk to him? He's banging and scratching on my door." She didn't text me back, probably because she was asleep. I texted my other roommate to the same effect, covering all my bases. Keep in mind that the scratching has been going on at this point for a couple minutes. I have no idea how he could have sustained it. Scratching a wooden door with your fingernails can't feel good. He also grabbed at the knob and jiggled it super forcefully. Because neither of them answered, I decided to call and really wake them up, though I was scared to make a sound. I know it sounds stupid, but there was something seriously horrifying about being teased like this through the door. I knew that he was trying to terrify me. I felt like a little kid, but I could tell this guy was fucked up or something, and maybe the police needed to be called, and I wanted to loop my roommates in since it was one of their friends. The scratching stopped abruptly, and I called my roommate, who answered sleepily. "Yo, your friend is messed up. Can you please deal with it? Do we need to call the cops? He's seriously scaring me, and he was scratching at my bedroom door. Really fucking weird." She didn't say anything for several seconds, and when she did speak, her voice had no sleepiness in it at all. "What friend?" she said. "That fucking guy that was sleeping on the couch," I said. She was quiet again. "We didn't have any guys over," she said. "Call the police." My adrenaline surged, and I told her to please lock the bedroom door as quickly as possible. I realized that I hadn't heard scratching in a while, and I had no clue where the dude had gone. Suddenly, I heard a loud banging in the other end of the house, where my roommates, Lauren and Monica, shared a bedroom. The bangs were followed by the sound of them screaming in fear. I quickly dialed the police as this maniac proceeded to bang against the luckily locked bedroom door of my two roommates as they screamed. The heaviness of the blows left no doubt that he was trying to break the door down. I told the 911 operator the situation, and she dispatched 2 squad cars. The police in Ala Vista are generally used to peeling drunks off the sidewalk and breaking up brawling frat bros. This was really serious and strange, and I think the dispatcher got the sense from my tone how terrified I was, and she stayed on the phone with me. At one point, the banging stopped, and everything was quiet for a while. I talked with the dispatcher and suddenly looked down to see that this guy had slipped his fingers through the 1-inch gap between my door and the floor, and was just kind of waggling them around, making this weird growling sound. I screamed and backed away, which is my biggest regret about this situation, since when I look back, it would have been so awesome to just stomp the shit out of those fingers and hear the guy howl in pain. When the cops rolled up, I heard running and the sound of our sliding glass door opening and closing, and then he was gone. The cops never caught him. He had broken in through our side door by jimmying the lock somehow. My door was covered in what turned out to be huge gauges he'd made using a pair of scissors, which he discarded on the ground before he left. What terrifies me most about this was that I walked right past him. I looked him right in the face. I realize now that he was not trying to sleep or on drugs, but was lying so stiff like that because he was hiding. He probably heard me open the door and freaked out because he hadn't realized there was another girl living there and tried to blend into the couch in the darkness. As our journey through the shadows comes to a close, we want to extend a heartfelt thank you for watching. Your presence illuminates the darkest corners of our tales, and it's you, our brave viewers, who make Dark Conduit truly alive. Remember, if tonight's tale has left a whisper in your ear or a shadow in your heart, support us by hitting that like button and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Every like, comment, and share helps us keep the lanterns burning and the stories flowing. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to become a permanent traveler in our eerie adventures. Until next time, keep the lights dim and your curiosity alight. Thank you, and good night from Dark Conduit.